Welcome to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast, the place for scrappy entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran and former brick-and-mortar boutique owner who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Welcome back to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. This is week 4 of our Badass Basics series, where we're breaking down the foundational stuff every e-commerce store needs to have in place, whether you're just getting started or you've been at this for years and possibly skipped a few steps along the way. When it comes to growing your e-commerce business, you have 3 options. Get more customers, bring your existing customers back more often, or get the ones who are already shopping to spend more while they're there. While all of these levers are important, getting someone who is already in buying mode to add one more thing to their cart or upgrade what they're already getting is the lowest effort, lowest cost way to grow your revenue. So today we're covering easy ways to increase your average order value. So let's start with cross-sells. And a cross-sell is just a complementary product to what someone is already buying. If someone's buying a pair of pants, you suggest a top. If they're buying a candle, you suggest the wick cutter. If someone's buying a dog collar, you suggest the matching leash. The goal is to show them something that genuinely goes with what they've already picked out, not just throwing random products at them. Think of this as the experience you have in a fitting room at a boutique. A good sales associate doesn't hand you the items and disappear. They come back with a few things that they know are going to work with what you've already walked in with. It's also the recommendation a cashier makes to you when you're checking out, or the impulse fixture you browse while you wait in line. It's the "do you want fries with that?" Your product page is the first opportunity you have to implement cross-sells. If you're on Shopify, at a minimum, you want to get started with Shopify Search and Discovery app. This allows you to add complementary products to the product information section of your product template. Think right under your Add to Cart button. You set these up manually, meaning you're telling Shopify which products pair with which. Yes, it's a project, especially if you have a big catalog, but it's a one-time setup and then it just works. The second feature that Shopify's Search and Discovery app has is recommended products. This is the "you may also like" section that's going to show up at the bottom of the page. This one can run automatically based on Shopify's algorithm, or you can curate it yourself. While both of these are a great place to start, especially if you don't want to have to pay for another app, they are passive. They just sit there and you hope the customer takes notice. I prefer a more active cross-sell, one that interrupts the shopping experience and requires the customer to make a decision. Either they opt to take the cross-sell or they don't. You definitely need an app to create this type of experience, but don't worry, I'm going to add recommendations in the show notes. Cross-sells at the product level are generally the best option when you have a really wide assortment of product and you need to make more intentional matchups. When you're thinking about what you want to present as a cross-sell at this stage, you want to be careful that you're not asking too much of the customer and that you're mimicking how they already shop. So price-wise, you want to be careful that you're not asking them to double or triple what they were already planning to spend. I try and keep cross-sells at about 15 to 30% of the price of the original product they were buying. Now, this is not always going to be possible depending upon the range of your products, so don't feel like, oh, I can't get it into this 15 to 30%, so I shouldn't do it at all. As long as you're smart and intentional about it, you should still give it a shot. For example, with my brick-and-mortar boutique, if someone was buying a $150 pair of jeans, I wasn't going to recommend another pair of jeans at the same price, but I could recommend a $50 top. If they were buying a $50 top, then I would recommend a $24 necklace. Sure, the necklace is 50% of the price of the top, but overall we're talking relatively low numbers for what I sold, so it still worked. Additionally, you want to make sure you're offering them products that are often already purchased together. Don't try and change someone's shopping behavior. It's too hard. For example, if you sell jewelry, there is often an instinct to show them a bracelet if they buy a pair of earrings. But if your customer doesn't already buy matching sets, then this likely isn't going to convert well. Instead, you might want to just offer them another pair of earrings. And you have to look at what the data in your store is telling you and see what people are already buying together. So maybe your customers like to buy a hoop and a stud so they can be worn together. Or maybe they buy multiple drop earrings or multiple rings or bracelets that they can stack. Use your data to inform what your cross-sells should be. If you have a smaller product assortment and can narrow down the cross-sell items to a handful of best sellers or obvious add-ons that work with the majority of what you sell, that's when a cross-sell at the cart level makes more sense than at the product level. Now, you can do this passively by showing items in the cart or more actively by triggering a pop-up when someone hits the Start Checkout button. If the product page cross-sell is the fitting room, then the cart level cross-sell is making recommendations at the cash wrap. What you cross-sell at this stage is likely to be different from what you would cross-sell at the product stage. These have to be a bit more universal versus being super specific to the product. In our jewelry example, we talked about looking at how your people shop naturally and offering them a second product they are likely to buy. That could also work here, depending on the style of jewelry you sell. If you have one particular style of jewelry that all of your customers love, then sure, this works. If, however, you have a lot of different styles of jewelry, then it's probably easier to offer them a jewelry cleaner because that's universal and it doesn't really matter what they bought. Ultimately, you want this cross-sell to be as much of a no-brainer as possible. They're so close to checking out, you don't want to take them out of the buying process and make them start second-guessing their decisions or making them think too long and hard about what you're offering. It needs to be an easy yes. Again, leaning on our brick-and-mortar example, think about what is usually at or on the cash wrap. In my boutique, I had fashion tape, seamless underwear, that little plastic thing that would turn a regular bra into a racerback bra. I can't remember what that was called. And because it was the mid-2000s, scarves. Then we have the post-purchase moment, right after they place their order on the thank you page. Post-purchase cross-sells are one of the highest converting cross-sells because the customer has already decided to buy from you. They've already trusted you enough to put in their credit card number and give you money. They also just got a dopamine hit for making a purchase. While there is a lot of overlap with the checkout cross-sell, you do actually have a little bit more freedom here. Think of this like they're walking out of the store and saw something super cute they missed the first time around. Or they just remembered they needed to pick up a gift for so-and-so, or they meant to buy XYZ. It's the thing they forgot. Because they've already made the buying decision and you've already gotten the sale, you can be a bit more bold with what you offer here. While a no-brainer, like the checkout cross-sells we discussed, is still your best bet, you don't have to be quite as strict with the price point, and you could make a bit of a higher priced offer if you want, but it still needs to feel like an easy yes. I know it's a little bit of a fine line to walk here. It could be something complimentary, like we've been discussing. It could be an upsell, which is technically just a larger version of the same thing. We'll talk more about that in a sec. It could just be a bestseller that everyone loves and for some reason this customer didn't buy it. Or it could be another unit of the same exact thing they already bought. If you've ever seen me on video, you know I own a lot of black t-shirts. You might think I'm always wearing the same one, but no, friend, I have a lot of black t-shirts. If I was buying a tee I loved and the store just offered me more of the same at a slight discount, you know I would be buying it, right? So yeah, even if you feel like you don't have something else to offer them, maybe just offer them more of the same. All right, now let's talk about upsells. While upsell and cross-sell are often used interchangeably, technically they're not. A true upsell, when you're talking about physical products, is getting the customer to buy a bigger or better version of what they were already buying. If you sell coffee and have a 12-ounce bag and a 24-ounce bag, getting someone to go for the 24-ounce is an upsell. If you sell lashes and you offer a single pair or a pack of 3, getting them to choose the pack of 3, upsell. So same product, just more of it. Or if you have a newer or updated version of something, pointing them toward that instead is also an upsell. You see this on stores like Amazon a lot, especially with anything technical. You'll be on the product page and there'll be a little note that says there's a newer version available. You can also consider that an upsell. Where you implement the upsell is going to depend on your product assortment. If you're a one product store or a one category store like scented candles, you can put these at checkout. Otherwise, I'd put them on the product level. Now, if your products are listed as variants, you don't necessarily have to do this because you would hope that the customer would have already seen that you have both sizes, but it wouldn't hurt to try, honestly. Especially if your variants are listed as a drop-down, maybe the customer didn't even see it. The one downside to upsells like this, where you're just having them buy the bigger version, is it's likely going to increase the time between their purchases. So before, maybe they would buy in 30 days versus if they get the larger one, it's going to be 60 days. But honestly, I don't think that's a good enough reason not to use them. Then, of course, we have bundles. Bundles are essentially their own form of cross-sells and upsells. They're just predetermined. Bundles also have a bit of their own strategic layer, which is why we're talking about them separately. At the most basic level, a bundle is a combination of products sold together, sometimes at a slight discount, sometimes not. But there are a few ways to approach bundling, and they serve different goals. Let's talk about the forced bundle or the pre-pack. This is when there is no option to purchase a product individually, and they must be bought in a pack. Think of underwear or socks you buy at a big box store. This makes the most sense for low-priced products. It protects your margins, increases your AOV naturally, and sometimes makes more sense from a product use perspective too. If you sell hair ties, you're probably not going to sell them one at a time, right? It wouldn't even be logical because one day in and that hair tie is going to be gone anyway. So you just make the multi-pack the only option. Then we have the inventory movement bundle. I just made that up for this episode. If you've got something sitting in your inventory that isn't moving, pair it with a best-selling item that does. Price it right, and it feels like a deal to the customer. For you, it's inventory management with an AOV benefit built in. Then we have our curated and gift-ready bundles. This is where you do the work of putting together a great combination. Maybe you give it a special name, and suddenly someone who was going to buy one thing is buying 3 because you made it really easy. You can also just think of these as pre-made bundles. There are a few different ways to curate them. First, you can sell multiple of the same product in one bundle. Similar to the pre-pack, but in this case, they can still buy the products individually. For example, if you sell scented candles, you might put together a bundle of all of your best-selling scents or all of one kind of scent, like all of your floral scents or all of your beachy scents. Or you might put together a seasonal bundle. If you release seasonal scents, colors, or flavors, you can bundle all of the seasonal releases together for a slight discount. It doesn't even need to be different variants, right? Like we're talking about different scents and things like that. It could just be a pack of multiples. Then we have the mix and match product bundle. These can be built around a theme, for example, a scent or a print, or you can just create an experience. So I had an email client who is an artist. She takes her drawings and puts them on products like cards, writing pads, tote bags, tea towels. For Mother's Day, she curates a box, one of each of her best-selling products with one of her art drawings. It's a flower she created. I'm not even sure if she sells items with that flower on it outside of the Mother's Day box, but that part doesn't really matter. This is also like when you buy a perfume and you get the matching scented hand lotion and the travel size bottle. Or again, you can just create an experience. So a bag of coffee with a mug, a pair of socks, and a bookmark. Mix and match product bundles are definitely a bit more labor and inventory intensive, unless it's going to be a main part of your business model or your entire business model. Plenty of companies out there that just do curated gift boxes like this. I recommend you only focus on them around popular gift-giving holidays. In addition to being a great way to make things easy on your customer, it's also a great opportunity to build a product launch campaign with the built-in urgency of limited quantities. Then we have build your own bundles. This is where you put your customers in the driver's seat. You set the parameters of how many products they need to choose, and they do the rest. This works whether you're offering multiple of the same product or mix and match bundles. The one thing to be careful about here is that while build your own bundles naturally sound like the better option because you're letting the customers choose, the truth is they can lead to analysis paralysis. If you feel inclined to have a build your own bundle option, I also recommend you have some pre-made bundles too, just to make it easier on the customer so they don't have to make as many decisions. And mind you, bundles also show up as things like buy two, get ones, buy three and save, those kinds of promotions, all the same thing. Now, how you actually implement these bundles depends on a few factors. The first being, are they pre-made or build your own? They can also live in multiple different places on your website. So you can create them as their own separate product. You can put them as frequently bought together, one-click add to cart from the product page. You can even use the bundle option as an upsell. So if someone adds one unit to their cart, you can offer them the 3-pack instead. There's no perfect way to offer a bundle. It just depends on what you're creating. I recommend you decide on your bundle formation strategy first, and then it will be easier to figure out the right way to present it on your site. So when it comes to increasing your e-commerce average order value, the majority of your efforts are going to be on the website itself, essentially everything we've talked about so far. But there is one other place you can implement a cross-sell strategy if it's a better fit for your tech stack, and that is sending a post-purchase cross-sell in email. And I don't mean sending a cross-sell X number of days after someone bought from you. We'll talk more about that later in the series in our retention episode. I mean sending an email immediately or just a few minutes after the order is placed. There are two specific situations where I had to implement it this way. Both of them were on older versions of Shopify, though, before apps could integrate directly into the checkout. In this day and age, it shouldn't be an issue, but I wanted to make sure to mention it just in case. Plus, it's a really easy way to test something out without having to add another app to your store. The trick with this implementation is that it needs to be an inexpensive, no-brainer product, and you want to put a short time limit on the offer. At my previous day job, it was a private label toy cleaner that we had a really good margin on, and I could offer it at 50% off. With a client of mine who sold razors, it was a holder that would stick to the wall of the shower to hold that razor. I feel like we used copy something like stop chasing your razor down the tub. Raise your hand if you do that. So we set up an automated flow that would send just a few minutes after they completed their purchase with a really good offer on that individual product. I don't remember the numbers anymore, but it converted really well. Now, of course, this is technically creating a separate order. So it's actually going to decrease your AOV, but you're still making more money, so don't get too hung up on that. There was also an app that was super popular back in the day that would let you add featured products to your order confirmation emails. I'm not even going to mention it because I just took a peek to see if it was still around, and it seems the app has had some major tech issues. There's a lot of horror stories in the reviews, so I'm not going to recommend it. But honestly, if you're on Shopify and you want to implement a post-purchase cross-sell, you should really just use an app that embeds on the thank you page. If you're not on Shopify and your platform doesn't have a post-purchase cross-sell option, you can try the automated email way. All of that said, the most important thing to keep in mind when developing your AOV optimization strategy is that these strategies are a system, not a menu where you pick one and call it done. Cross-sells, upsells, and bundles aren't 3 separate initiatives. They're tools you mix and match for your unique product assortment and business. You can implement all of them at the same time if they're strategic. A bundle can live as a unique product on your site and also be an upsell. You can have a cross-sell, an upsell, and a post-purchase offer all at the same time. You can have year-round evergreen offers and ones that you bring out for specific seasons. The wider your product assortment, the more opportunities you have. All of these individual strategies we talked about are like ingredients that you mix together to create the perfect dish. But at the same time, don't let that overwhelm you. You don't have to figure it out all right away. Just start with one and then layer them in over time. If I had to pick, I recommend you start with a simple cross-sell. For wide product assortments, trigger it at the product level, and for small product assortments, trigger it at the checkout step. Now, as I mentioned, you do need additional tech to implement the majority of what we talked about today, but don't worry, I got a few of my favorite tech recommendations for implementing this in the show notes at ecommercebadassery.com/372. So you can definitely check those out. If you have an account in the EB Vault, you can also head over to the must-have app space, and I have all of my favorite apps listed there as well. The one you have to think about the most is if you're going to do bundles. Again, create your bundle structure first, and then you can pick the bundle app that functions the way you need it to, because they all work very differently. Again, that's ecommercebadassery.com/372 to get the full show notes and my tech recommendations. And that's a wrap on this week's episode, friend. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about growing your e-commerce business, get started with my free resource library at ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff and get an invite to the Lounge, my e-commerce marketing membership. When you're ready for one-on-one support, apply to work with me at ecommercebadassery.com/apply. Before you go, would you do me a quick favor? Leave a rating and review and tap that follow button. This pushes me up the chart so I can support more scrappy e-commerce entrepreneurs just like you. I'm on a mission to reach as many as I can, and I could really use your help. Thanks so much in advance. Until next time, e-commerce friend, stay badass.